1 minute to air. The live stream has started.
Recording in progress.
Good afternoon, Bull City, Durham, North Carolina. We are here today in beautiful downtown Durham in our city hall and council chambers for a special meeting this afternoon for the ARPA funds that we will be talking about today on May 18, 2020 here at 2 p.m. I'm going to ask our clerk if she will call the roll. I do know that Mayor Pro Tem Middleton is running a little late, but will be here. And once we call the roll, I am going to turn this meeting over to our two colleagues who have been leading this effort, and that will be Councilwoman Javier Caballero and Councilman Leonardo Williams. Madam Clerk, if you will call the roll.
Mayor O'Neill.
I am present.
Mayor Pro Tem Middleton is delayed. Councilmember Caballero.
Here.
Councilmember Freeman.
Present.
Councilmember Hyman.
Here.
Councilmember Johnson.
Here.
And Councilmember Williams.
Here.
Thank you.
Right. In your capable hands.
Thank you, Mayor O'Neill. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us either via Zoom or in the audience today. Today we'll be taking up the long held up, and we apologize, ARPA process. I want to do a little bit of background and context of where we are in this moment to let us kind of reframe the conversation so that my colleagues know what we are undertaking today. I want to first thank Councilmember Williams for helping me along this process, and to all my colleagues for having really good one-on-one conversations. I think last summer, city staff undertook a community-driven ARPA process, and I think that I can speak on behalf of all of my colleagues to say that we are very pleased with the process. It took a lot of effort, both from community members and city staff, to get us to this point. And I also want to thank everyone for applying and for being part of this process with us. In December, we as council members received a work session item that laid out where we were with the staff process and the staff recommendation. At that time, council was not ready to make a decision. Both Mayor Elaine O'Neill and Councilmember Leonardo Williams had just been sworn in, and it was a large undertaking and a large decision to make. So we paused the process and decided that we would continue conversations, knowing that none of us on council, or very few of us on council, were completely prepared to follow the staff recommendation at the time. From that point, Mayor O'Neill asked me and Councilmember Williams if we would take up the charge, and Councilmember Jillian Johnson was gracious enough to come up with a funding Excel formula spreadsheet that was shared with the public that would help us move the process forward and allay some of the concerns as council members, I being one of them, for some of the projects that were not funded in that initial staff recommendation. Today, what we will be deciding is which we are honoring the staff process, but some of the decisions that we made as a council to date are that we were only going to use up to 50% of our ARPA money. That was a decision that council made probably about a month ago during a work session, because we understood that we wanted to have a chunk of money set aside for another process or for some other projects that may come up or other needs. Today as a council, what I am encouraging our colleagues to do is to make a decision based on the funding, the Excel spreadsheet that's been shared, which honors the 50% ARPA commitment. It also honors the staff process that was undertaken, that is based on community projects that were submitted. And after we hear from colleagues on which way they're leaning, so today basically what I'm asking my council colleagues to do is to choose either the staff recommended option, option A, option B, option C, or option D on the Excel spreadsheet. And we will also take public comment from some of the folks who are here today, either via Zoom or in the audience. But first, I would like to hear from my council colleagues any questions or comments they may have. I see one thumbs up. I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page on the decision that we're trying to make today. Okay. So everyone has the spreadsheet. We are choosing, meaning there will be, and I'm hoping Mayor Pro Tem Middleton will be here in time to choose one of the options, option A, option B, option C, or option D on the Excel spreadsheet. And I will also let staff give us an update on what would happen next in the process. So again, I'm just going to ask anyone on council if they have any questions or comments. And then if not, I was going to pass it over to Councilmember Williams to see if he could let the folks who signed up for public comment make their comments. Seeing as we have no comments or questions at this time, Councilmember Williams, if you don't mind letting the folks who signed up for public comment go ahead and.
Thank you, Councilmember Caballero. Just briefly on the actual spreadsheet, you may have noticed a change in the text, whereas it was there just a small adjustment on the wording of encourage to the joint county city process. Instead of having that forwarded to a space that was unknown, because we've yet to have that solid conversation with the county, it is a recommendation that it's not included in the current projects proposed for funding that falls under the city's purview. So that was a small technical change just to have a bit more clarity. And at this point, I'll go ahead and call for public comment. And Councilmember Mayor Pro Tem Middleton is walking in now. We'll go ahead and call the first person we have here, Ethel Simonetti. Are you in the chambers or online?
Councilmember Williams, Ms. Simonetti is not in the queue.
All right, we'll move to the next name, Shamika McNeil.
Councilmember Shamika is in the queue.
She is? Okay, go ahead and call her up, please. Ms. McNeil, are you able to raise your hand to be recognized virtually?
I'm sorry, did you say Shamika McNeil? Yep, I'm here.
Yes, Shamika McNeil. Thank you. And this is just public comment for a supporter to provide commentary on their application, their proposal here. And you'll have 3 minutes.
I'm sorry, could you hear me? I want to make sure that you heard me, sorry. Hello?
Yes, can you hear us?
I can hear you a little bit better now. What I wanted to say with the proposal that we're going on, I think this would be a really great project for Durham County residents, as we showed before in our Healthy Opportunities pilot. A lot of the resources that are needed in the community, community healthcare workers and CBOs such as myself provide those services for people who have been underserved or overlooked. In the program, we found different places that we had no idea that was there, and we were able to serve these clients very well in hopes for them to be able to get healthy and stay home, and that was a great success. I think these funds are needed for CBOs and CHWs to promote health and wellness across Durham County. And it also provided a lot of jobs for the CBOs to help the economy too. So I vote in favor for the ARPA funds.
Thank you, Ms. Mill. Could you state the project title and what you're speaking on?
I'll see if I can get more.
Oh, sorry. I think it's the Healthy Community with Duke University.
Could you repeat that, please? Ms. McNeil, could you repeat the project title?
I'm sorry, it's breaking up. I think it's the Community Health Fund with Duke University.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, next we have Mrs. Marie Faison. Ms. Faison, are you able to be recognized?
Councilmember Williams, Ms. Faison is not in the queue.
All right, sounds good. Ms. Benita Green.
Ms. Green is in the queue.
All right, Ms. Green, as you're getting prepared to speak, please start by stating your name and the project title and what you're speaking on behalf of.
Good afternoon. My name is Benita Green. I live at 831 Center Street, Durham, North Carolina, and I'm speaking for the Merrittmore Improvement Protections, Merrittmore Community Protections Project. The reason why, we feel that this is important because we feel that it is definitely important for communities to have a say in how they are developed. And this would be our opportunity to do that as we are a small community in Durham. It would also provide an opportunity not only for us to provide affordable housing, but as well protect green spaces that are within the community. And I'd also, before I sign off, would like to say that I am aware of the application Durham Social Determinants of Health Network, and that's going to benefit quite a few communities within the Durham area. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Green. Next, we have John Killeen.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you. Welcome.
Wonderful.
You have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Great. I'm signed up to on behalf of the Community-Driven Planning for Prosperous Futures proposal. I work for DataWorks, which is a data intermediary based here in Durham. But we are sort of fourth on the application behind the Bragtown Community Association, Walltown Community Association, and Merrittmore Community Associations. You just heard from Ms. Benita Green from Merrittmore, who's an author of the proposal as well. I'd be glad to speak in brief about the project and why we think this is important, but I'm also here signed up to be responsive to questions y'all might have. So that's another reason why we've tuned in today. This project is, I think, unique and special because it is built on several years of community involvement that's happened, largely related to real estate and land control in all of these communities. And we've been involved in it as a support behind those community organizations in each case. So you're probably familiar with the work that Walltown Community Association led up to establish a better future for the proposals for Northgate Mall. Same thing with Bragtown Community Association's pretty monumental improvements of real estate proposals for the Carver assemblage as well, which over the last 2 years have gone from being an unacceptable gentrification project that is actually inclusive of % AMI affordable housing. And that's to the credit of the rising of the neighborhoods involved. This is true for each 3 communities and the work that we've done with them, and a lot of knowledge has been built up within those neighborhoods and the people involved in organizing that can benefit each of the groups in collective. So this proposal is really to take time to slow down processes, which are often pushed by development pressures, by public planning processes even too, and to develop a consensus and to develop shared learning and a shared analysis of what's happening for these communities and what their priorities are. To take a couple of years to do that together in a slow and protected way. Then to another year to develop a plan for strategies and goals and implementation of what shared priorities would look like if implemented. And the other feature of our proposal is to put money into the plan for the goals established during that slow planning process across these communities that have been impacted directly by the history and legacy of institutional, systematic, and geographic racism of our community. So the last piece of this, after we've done that slow work of building and developing an analysis and shared learning together and calling in folks to scale up on specific topics, is some of it. And that's a crucial piece of it. And so some of the proposals to different versions of funding these proposals that would drastically reduce the amounts being requested might be problematic, but one of the key questions we come to you all with is what latitude applicants would have in altering the design of proposals if reduced in funding.
Thank you, Mr. Killeen. Thank you for sharing perspective on your application. All right, next up we have Thomas McQuiston. Thomas.
I'm here. Can you?
Okay, good.
Yeah. Hi. I'm with most specifically with the Reintegration Support Network, and we are part of a collaborative proposal that is focused on reentry support for citizens coming out of incarceration and into Durham. You all probably are aware that Durham, I have to say, does so many things so well in terms of reentry, but the needs far exceed the available programs. So our proposal, focused on reentry in our partnership, uses peer support. So we are building a cadre of peer supporters, people formerly incarcerated who have done well and succeeded on reentry, to help others who are reentering to help ensure that they can be successful. So these are essential programs for the hundreds of people who come back to Durham every year. We have a wonderful team of folks that are involved in the program. We worked collaboratively for a long time and then on this proposal. So this is not a single organization, but a team of organizations that has done some of the best work that could be done in Durham to make it a leader, not only locally, but in the state and perhaps nationally in terms of reentry work. So reentry work is kind of a shining star in Durham, and we want to enhance that and make it even greater. The needs still far exceed the ability that we and others have to meet those needs. The group I'm part of, Wounded Healers, we want to be known not as just people who help people transition and succeed, but we want to be known, and I think this is true of all of us involved in this program, to be healers within the community. We want to be known as a positive influence on the Durham community. Those coming out of prison can not only exist in Durham, but make Durham a better place to live for those who have suffered their time, are trying to redeem themselves, and trying to make Durham a better place to live.
Thank you so much, Mr. McQuiston. All right, next we have Maya Jackson. If you could start out with the name of the project title.
Yes, the name of the project title is Mame Inc. It Takes a Village. I am the founder director of Mame Inc. We are a community-based maternal health organization here in Durham. We provide holistic maternal health services to Black, Brown, and Indigenous people across the county. We are requesting funds to expand our services. Before COVID, we were tackling the Black maternal health crisis here in Durham, and the crisis is still happening. Durham alone has been recognized as having a C+ by the March of Dimes of having poor health outcomes for Black infants. And we are seeking funding to expand our work to ensure that all families of color and those who are historically excluded have full access to maternal and reproductive health care, as well as ensuring that the barriers that play on these poor health outcomes, such as systemic racism, that impacts their overall economic aspect for their families, is also decreased. So with the funds, we are looking to create a family community center, which will cover a clinic, which will cover a cooperative childcare center, which will also be our training grounds to train women and other people in the community who want to become perinatal health workers. So that way they can advance their career path and also pursue economic justice by having a sustainable wage.
Thank you so much, Ms. Jackson.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Afia Carter. You have 3 minutes. Please start with your project title.
Hi, so I don't have a specific project title. I am representing Back in the Black, a coalition united to increase awareness and support my community who has been historically and economically disadvantaged for generations. Through this process, the Back in the Black coalition was formed to advocate for equitable funding allocation for Black founded and Black-led organizations who traditionally have been overlooked or denied funding. This proposal was presented to our community to dream big. Unlike most grant writing processes, the ARPA proposal requirements continue to change even days up to submission. Once we learned how inequitable the review process was and saw the results, most of the members of the coalition learned that members of the community did not get to read our proposals. Feedback was based on bias, there were obvious conflicts of interest, and the process continued to change going into the new year. Since then, our community is dealing with more challenges as evidenced by multiple policy papers, including those by Resiliency and the National Black Child Agenda. After reviewing the recommendations to council, we are advocating that the council adopt option C with an additional recommendation to form an ad hoc committee to provide clarity in this meeting. That applicants referred to the city-county process will indeed have an opportunity for funding. The committee should be challenged to ensure that the end of the ARPA process, through the end of the ARPA process, and when all funds are allocated, and that the city has matched or exceeded its goal to allocate funding to those who don't normally receive it. We lastly continue to ask for the funding approvals and allocations to be made public and disaggregated by race. According to the Results for America dashboard, the city and county of Durham are not rated as providing a clear investment to building and strengthening data and evidence capacity. Thank you, and that's all my comments.
Thank you, Ms. Carter. Next up, we have Bree Davis. Ms. Davis, are you available to speak? Yeah.
Councilmember Williams, Ms. Davis is in the queue.
All right, thank you. You have 3 minutes, and please start with your project title that you're advocating on behalf.
Can you hear me clearly? Good afternoon.
You can speak up a little bit for us.
Just a moment. Let me adjust my sound. Can you hear me better?
Just a little bit.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Better? All right, thank you for your time. I'll make it brief. Just want to make sure that I follow up with everyone regarding, the advocacy of the Harriet Tubman Project and many other spots in Durham where we have underrepresented folks and folks that are being overlooked. As a longtime social entrepreneur, I learned a lot about Durham's history. I've been in various circles, and I'm hoping that this particular budget process, the resources reach the people. You guys will vote on it on my birthday, June 21st. And so that is a very powerful day for me. And I'm hopeful that each of you takes in consideration everyone that has come to the table today. And like I said, I'll make it brief. Y'all have a lot on your plate today. But those of us in the community that are advocating with our families, with our resources, please don't overlook us this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Davis. Next, we have Sharon Strudwick.
Councilmember Williams, there is no Sharon Strudwick in the queue. However, we do have a call-in speaker, and I'm not sure who that is.
Okay, we'll come back to that person. All right, next we have Larissa Seibel.
Hello, my name is Larissa Seibel, and I was speaking on eviction debt relief funds. I actually don't know who the agency is that applied for that, but I support it. It's not enough. We have 1,500 people on a waiting list who applied for Durham rent relief, and they did not get help because the city ran out of the funds that they had allocated. And I beg you to consider allocating these one-time ARPA funds, additional funds for rent relief, Durham rent relief, to help people who desperately need the funds. I was there today when a gentleman, his son, and his mother were going to be evicted today. I have a lady who has only stayed in her home the last few months. I go and visit just to see if she's still in her home, just because legal aid has helped her stay in her home and get repairs. And she got the email from the city saying that she wouldn't get funding. And one day I went by and mom wasn't there, and the 10-year-old asked me how long before we're going to be put out. And it's a 10-year-old, a 7-year-old, and a 4-year-old in that one-bedroom home, which is all they can afford. They can't find anything else for $700 a month. I have another lady who actually became homeless when she had to double up with someone, and her housemate left, and she became homeless. She was living in her car with her dog. She couldn't even go to the shelter because she had a dog. When she did get to the shelter, she was just getting so sick from the stress. She ended up in the hospital, and she's still in a facility now, recovering. It's a great need to prevent eviction, especially right now when there's just nowhere for people to live. So I hope that you will consider more funds for Durham rent relief for the 1,500 people who are waiting for help and other people who desperately need help to stay in their homes. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Seibel. And next we have Mr. Robert Kroom.
Councilmember Williams, there is no Robert Kroom in the virtual queue.
All right, would you help me identify the call-in?
For the caller to speak, they need to dial *6 to unmute.
All right, if you're calling in, please press *6 to identify yourself.
Yes, this is Robert Crum. I
Okay,
didn't
Mr. Crum.
plan to speak, but Mrs. Seibel has spoken on behalf of the rental relief. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Crum. All right, we'll now move to speakers in the chamber. The first card I have here is Edgar Vergara. Right over to your left, and you have 3 minutes.
Everyone's spoken. He just spoke. All those people have spoken.
Bless you. Good evening, Mayor O'Neill, esteemed council members. My name is Edgar Vergara Millán. I'm the pastor and executive director of Iglesia La Semilla here in Durham. Iglesia La Semilla is part of the Durham Healing Collaborative application. And that application includes 9 different CDOs. And I know it's on the second category, I guess, of do not fund, but encourage to reapply or something to that effect.
Could you repeat the name of it?
Durham Healing Collaborative.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So yes, Iglesia La Semilla, from the very early stages of the pandemic, has been providing support for Durham area families, mainly through food assistance early on, and also PPE, back when masks were $1 a piece, disposable masks. You know, a box of 30, 50 masks was like $50. And we have been serving the community with all of our hearts. Towards the end of 2020, we're part of the state of North Carolina's Community Health Worker Initiative, and our focus was connecting families to resources in the form of social support that ensured families could quarantine if a family member had contracted the virus or if they had had contact with someone who had tested positive. When vaccines became a reality, our community health workers began our vaccination campaign here in Durham and the surrounding areas. Ever since then, we have been able to directly help over 50,000 residents receive a vaccine. We continue our work today. We were part of the Durham Vaccine Equity Initiative as well. And I just want to make an emphasis on that, because I just want to thank you for that, because through that initiative, you provided the resources necessary for self-empowerment. Empowerment comes from the people, right? But the people sometimes lack the resources that are needed for self-empowerment. That initiative ended for us early in December. And as you know, the Omicron variant reached its height late in December. So our community health workers continued working without proper resources. At that time, we provided over 1,000, performed over 1,000 COVID-19 tests for the Hispanic, Latino, Latina, Latinx community in the area of Durham. And so this application process, frankly, was confusing and frustrating. And so we just request some clarity in terms of what the recommendation to apply to county funding or reapply or what that entails. We would really appreciate that. The work continues. We just lack the proper resources to continue this work. Currently, I would appreciate that. And you're in my prayers, by the way. Yeah.
Sorry. Good afternoon, Mr. Johnson. You have 3 minutes.
All right, thank you, Lenore. My name is Fred Johnson. I sit in the Division of Community Health in the Department of Family Medicine at Duke, and I'm here to speak on a proposal that's not on your list, not sure why. Maybe, I think it might have been put in that joint pile. It's the Durham Social Determinants of Health Network. I have a copy if anybody wants a copy to take home and read. It's a very
Could you repeat the name of it, please?
So what?
Could you repeat the name of the project title?
Durham Social Determinants of Health. It was submitted way back. And as Edgar just mentioned, their work on PPs, let me just tell you a little story about this network. It represents about 20 community organizations in Durham 3 years ago, we won an award from CARES Act money to supply wraparound services to Durham residents. And just to give you an idea, the first person you heard today was Shamika McNeil. She's the CEO of Slice 325. She alone, in a 7-month period, delivered over 50,000 meals to Durham residents so they would stay home while they quarantined. We cut, over a 6-month period, $400, $700, and $1,200 checks to over 2,772 Durham household residents. We also delivered over 7,000 food boxes. And as Edgar mentioned, La Samila was part of the group. They also delivered PPE kits. We delivered over 5,000. This network has now submitted a proposal to you all to expand on a Medicaid program that's being piloted in 3 other regions that will go live in about 3 years. And we're hoping this funding will transition our CBOs from being grant funded to a revenue stream based on the delivery of a specific service. There are 28 services in this proposal. They target the CDC SVI census tracts, many of which are the same census tracts you all discussed months ago regarding gang activity. Housing, transportation, food, and interpersonal violence. My question to the group is, what happened to our proposal? My time's up. I'll keep talking?
Yeah, you have
I'm very good at that.
You have 29 seconds.
But do you have an idea what happened to our, because all the groups are calling me up saying, why aren't we listed? I'm the lead organizer and part of the backbone organization. The funding will mostly go to the groups to deliver the services.
Yeah, so while you were speaking, I sent a notification to our budget department, and they should get back with me in just a moment. I've also asked the clerk to look into it as well.
Because I worked directly with Leela, and she confirmed they had it. And so did Simeon White.
Yeah, so today we won't be making a final determination. We'll just be moving it to the next process. So we may not have it on this sheet, but I'm sure they have it.
We're asking for $6 million, and we're also suggesting it be split between the city and the county. We have a $12 million commitment to do the same program in Wake County. Do you want one?
Thank you so much. Standing up in the black coat over here. Thank you so much. Right over here. All right, next we have Ajax Woolley. Welcome, you have 3 minutes. Please state your project title.
Good afternoon, Mayor O'Neill, Mayor Pro Tem Middleton, members of council. My name is Ajax Woolley. I live at 408 Bon Air Avenue, and I'm a co-chair of the Durham Can Affordable Housing Team, also a guest organizer in the Grant Street community. I'm actually here to speak to you today about 4 different proposals. 3 are from one partner that we work with, DASH, the Durham Affordable Sustainable Housing Proposal, MASS, M-A-S-S, the Multifamily Acquisition Support and Supply Proposal, and DHHIP, the Durham Homeowner and Homebuyer Initiated Program. I want to tell you a little bit about the experience that we've had at Grant Street with community-controlled planning at a very small scale with the lots that council redonated back to Grant Street about a year ago on May 3rd. 702, 704 Grant Street and 917 Grant Street, after a couple of years of organizing by the leaders in the Grant Street community in conjunction with Durham Can Affordable Housing Team. The authors of these proposals have been extremely sensitive and accommodating with their time, their attentiveness, their flexibility, their responsiveness to the group that we work with. They've attended meetings sitting on the corner under the mulberry tree at the corner of Umstead and Grant Street. They've attended other community meetings that we've invited them to, even when they have not necessarily been directly affiliated with their projects. When we realized that there was a need for a redesign based on the character of the lots, they were willing to essentially erase the chalkboard and start from scratch to accommodate the wishes of the residents on the block. So I think it speaks to a commitment to a sort of philosophy around community-controlled and community-driven planning. And I'd just like to offer a little bit of that storytelling by way of a positive experience on reflection for those three proposals. Similarly, as a resident in the greater Bragtown area where the Bragtown Community Association serves, I need to pull up the name of the other one. I'd like to speak in favor of the community-driven Planning for Prosperous Futures proposal. I'm speaking on that proposal as an individual who is a resident in the Bragtown area. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, we have Leslie. First name Leslie? Okay. Sorry to be informal. I couldn't see the last name spelling, so. Nidek. Okay. Leslie Nidek.
Good afternoon, Mayor O'Neill and council folk. I'm here just learning that I can speak on the part of the proposal we have with the U.S. Committee for Refugees and Immigrants. I'm an attorney. We have a North Carolina field office, and during the pandemic, we served a lot of residents who are undocumented in Durham who are otherwise not eligible for legal services, and partnered with Durham Crisis Response Center and with people like Larissa for folks facing eviction. And our proposal is basically to continue the pandemic-related work that we have for those who have no, especially I think our proposal focused on domestic violence victims and those who are not able to afford rent, such as Larissa's clients, providing legal assistance for folks who have no ability to get legal aid due to being undocumented. And literally we're on the streets where we more or less helped them with wraparound services like diapers, food, transportation, job training, but most importantly, homelessness prevention and domestic violence relief and applications for visas with the U.S. Customs and Immigration Services, such as U visas, trafficking, asylum, things like that. So I actually haven't really read, we have very little feedback on what's happening other than I know there's A, B, and C, and I guess we would advocate for any allocation that gives a percentage to everyone because we support all the projects that we've heard today. And anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Nidek. Next, I have Sherry Taylor. You have 3 minutes, if you can start with your project title.
Good afternoon, Mayor Neal and council members. My name is Sherry Taylor, and the projects that I'm here talking about today are DASH, Durham Affordable Sustainable Housing, MASS, Multifamily Acquisition Support and Supply, and Durham Homebuyer and Homeowner Initiated Programs. I'm an asset manager for Durham Community Land Trustees, and we are advocates and developers of affordable housing. We've been in the city since 1987, and we realize that the market that we are in is very challenging, both on the rental side and the homeowner side of things. So these three proposals will help us increase production of affordable housing in 3 different ways. DASH is a sustainable, 100% sustainable net zero project. It will be the first net zero project in the city of Durham. We would appreciate any funding to help us get there. It's especially important for a community in East Durham that has been suffering with environmental justice issues. MASS will help us, that's the multi-family acquisition supply and support program. That will help us acquire naturally affordable housing. At this point in Durham, we have a lot of competition when purchasing rental housing, and the competition is coming from outside of the state, outside of the country, and the prices are not affordable to us to acquire. We would like to provide more, and acquisition is the fastest way to do that. And lastly, the home buyer and homeowner support program will help us really work with homeowners who are struggling to maintain their homes, and also home buyers who need a little bit more down payment assistance. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Taylor. And as I'm about to call the last name, if you are here to speak on behalf of a proposal, and you have not signed up with the yellow card over to your right where the clerk's desk is, please do so. The last card I have here is Ms. Kelly Crane. If I mispronounce your name, please correct me when you get it's Crane or Crone.
It's Crane, you got it right. My handwriting is bad. Thank you so much for having me here today, guys, and hearing all these amazing proposals. My name's Kelly Crane. I'm the Executive Director of Farmer Food Chair here in Durham. And so I'm speaking on behalf of our proposal. It's called Rebuilding Capacity to Pre-COVID Levels. If you're looking for it, it's in the Encourage to County process health and wellness kind of bucket that you guys have lined out. So for those of you guys who don't know about Farmer Food Chair already, who we are is we're an organization that both fights hunger and supports our local farmers. And so we source from all North Carolina produce in Durham County and the counties surrounding it from the farmers that grow it. And then our motto is fresh local food for all. And so we make sure that that food goes to eaters of all income levels in our area. So not just high wealth individuals who can afford to go to farmers markets and upscale retailers, but folks who are experiencing food insecurity as well. So the way we do that is we aggregate all of that local deliciousness at our warehouse, and then we distribute it either through institutions and businesses like restaurants and Duke Dining. We've worked with the Durham Public School System in the past, but we also work with local food banks and food pantries to distribute that to our neighbors experiencing food insecurity. And so last year, for example, about 50% of the food in our food hub ended up on the plates of families and individuals experiencing food insecurity in our communities. So our proposal is kind of broad in breadth, but essentially what it is proposing that we do is both maintain the sort of hunger relief efforts that we have going now that we started really ramping up in light of COVID, and also to resume some of the activities like the educational activities around uses and access of food that we were doing pre-pandemic that weren't really possible during the pandemic because of school shutting down and stuff like that. So yeah, that is what we're asking for, and we hope that you will take it under consideration. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much, Ms. Crane. If there are any others in the audience, please see the clerk. And if there's anyone online virtually that is interested in speaking on behalf of a proposal, please raise your hand. Use the raise your hand option or *6 to unmute and announce your name. All right. I would also state on the record that if there is anyone that would like to provide commentary on a proposal, to feel free to email the City Council, and we all will receive it. All right.
Thank you so much, Councilmember Williams. Thank you so much for everyone who came today to provide either in the audience or on Zoom public comment on the projects. I do want to just remind folks some of the decisions that were made prior to this meeting. Prior to this meeting, some of the decisions we made were to pull out some of the projects that we identified that historically fall under the county's purview in hopes that they would take some of these projects that are community-led. The reason the initial spreadsheet said for a joint city-county process in the future. At this time, at least from my understanding, is the county is moving forward in a different manner, and so we felt that it was not fair to community members to just kind of leave it in this nebulous space and just to say very clearly we were not funding those projects. I do want to remind folks that the county also received ARPA funds, slightly over $60 million. Durham Public Schools also received ARPA funds, and so did the city. Each branch of local government is choosing to do this process very differently from one another. The city of Durham from day one has decided that we would take a percentage, in fact, about 50% of our ARPA money, and do a community-led process. We understand that there's a lot of need in Durham, and we understand that we're not going to be able to fund everyone, but I did want to share some of that context so that folks had a better understanding of why maybe their project didn't move forward, even if it was a very, very good project. The projects that we are undertaking today are on our own identified projects. We are putting this money back out into the community. That is a harder process, and I really want to thank everyone for their patience. After today and the decisions that we make today, the next step will be back to move it back to staff so that they can move these projects forward. I'll let City Manager Wanda Page speak to that a little bit more. I don't want folks to leave today saying, oh, we've got this money. We are following a federal process, and there's rules that we have to follow or we pay the money back. That's the bottom line, and we're going to honor that process because I know that I don't think anyone up on this dais wants to pay the federal government any money back for ARPA. So I just wanted everyone to understand in the community that we also have to follow the rules and we have to understand what we're undertaking. So at this time, I want to open it back up to council colleagues for any questions or comments. Again, I'm urging us to stick to the spreadsheet in front of us and to make a decision based on columns or options A, B, C, or D. Option A is essentially the staff process. Anything that made above, I think it was 24 was the cut score, we would fund at that level, and it totals out at the bottom. Option B is basically a tiered approach. So the projects that scored higher would receive funding and we'd slowly work down, but everyone would receive funding that is listed. Option C would be everyone gets up to 70% of what they're asking with a max of $1 million. And option D, everyone would get up to 100% of their request with a max of $1 million. But that option does go over the half amount that we had agreed to earlier. I just want to name that. So at this time, again, opening it up for any questions or comments that my colleagues may have. Yes, Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Councilmember Caballero. Are you interested now in our thoughts on which of the options we should move forward with?
Yes, and any other, and again, folks may have different opinions, but I was hoping that today we would leave with one of these instead of, belaboring the process longer, and so folks would have at least some clear answers.
Yes, thank you. I agree. I think that the goal should be to leave here today with a path forward. There are a lot of really good proposals here, and it's a hard decision. I appreciate the clarity on the question about the joint city-county process. I know that the mayor and Chair Howerton were discussing possibilities for that, and I hope that those conversations will continue because I do think that it would be best for us to work together with the county to make this happen if we can. But that to make it clear that we do not know yet what that process looks like or whether these projects are going to be able to be funded through the process is good clarity for community members, and I appreciate y'all figuring that out. Personally, I think that speed is of the essence at this point. We've been trying to figure this out for a while, and this money does no good in the City of Durham bank account. I want it to be out in the community doing work. As for the 4 options, personally, I lean a little bit towards option B because I think it takes into account the the quality of the proposals as evaluated by staff in the determination of how to fund them, and it stays under our threshold of spending half of the available funding right now. I don't feel super strongly about option B, but that would be my first choice. I think my second choice would probably be option C, which is just a flat 70% of all the projects up to $1 million. I think that there's been enough concern expressed on the council about keeping some money for a round 2, a future process, that I think option D is not going to be the best for us, because I think there's enough concern about making sure that we have the resources for that second process, that we shouldn't go over the threshold that we set. And I think I would rather fund more proposals than fewer, which is why option A would not be at the top of my list. So first choice B, second choice C, and would really like to be able to direct the staff at the end of this meeting with how we want to move forward for the distribution of at least this first chunk of funding. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Johnson. At this time, Councilmember Freeman.
Thank you, Councilmember Caballero, and thank you, Councilmember Johnson, for putting this spreadsheet together and laying it out as clearly as possible. There's a lot that's happening. I do want to just highlight some pinpoints and some of the tensions are. I will note that the fact that these are all projects listed and funding requests based on the spreadsheet that Councilmember Johnson put together, I do want to highlight the fact that the invite to reapply that fall below the 24 that have been pushed off of the list, or that are above the 24 that would have been pushed off the staff's list, kind of precludes some of the ones that we did identify as city and county. And so I do want to make sure we do pull some of that back into the conversation, noting that that would probably add another 14 million to this conversation. So I want to say that. And then just based on that context of how I appreciate Councilmember Johnson kind of putting her perspective on which projects kind of fall city, county, and that we shouldn't do. But I do want to say that it does give me a little bit of pause, acknowledging there was one specifically around mentoring that I did mention that I did think would fit nicely in our kind of Office on Youth, Workforce Development kind of push. And so there was just some massaging that I felt like needed to happen. I would really like to see our staff take a stab at reorganizing this list based on some of the feedback we're giving or getting today and some of the context of how all of this has been set. So this framework is helpful, but the equity side of it still is not being applied. And so I'm mindful that timing is everything and that folks have been waiting a long time since December to move this forward. And so I would be very happy to move forward with option C, but I do want to have a conversation about what it looks like to include up to the 24 for the items that were removed that the staff thought should be funded.
Thank you, Councilmember Freeman.
I'm sorry, and just one more point. Just noting that if we need to have some conversation around the 14 million that would be added, the 8 million that were actually advised by staff to be invited to reapply should be where we have some tension and conversation around which way we could go to get the number back down to around 20 million. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Freeman. I'm going to see if anyone else has any comment before I address Councilmember Freeman's suggestions. Councilmember Williams?
Yeah, I think it's important that we understand that there's still a lot of deliberation that has to happen with staff and the applicants. So the numbers that we have here, I think two missing keywords is up to the actual desired amount. So we should probably be really careful about discussing hard numbers. I'm just going to use an arbitrary example. Someone may have applied for $1 million. It's not ironclad that they're going to get $1 million. It's up to $1 million. So part of the conversation, let's say, Councilmember Freeman, you want to talk about adding those projects back in there. I think in regards to cart before the horse, we want to have to determine, maybe another phase or another step. I'm not sure, but staff has to do their due diligence to work with the applicants to determine what would be the appropriate amount to fund up to within their desired amount, if that makes sense. And that's going to give us, one thing we have that's a hard line is we're not going to go over 50%. So if we're going to fund up to, it may provide more capacity to fit within that amount of 20 million. So
I was just going to say, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yep.
So just to clarify, what I'm hearing is that, and this is for everyone, the next step in the process is going to then be staff-led, because around contracting, you're going to have to work with our staff, and we're going to have to make sure that those contracts adhere to the rules from HUD. Not from HUD, I'm sorry, from, Treasury. Thank you. But if there is some capacity because we have leftover money, then what I'm hearing from council members is that we may be willing to look at some of the projects that are listed in the do not fund right now. But I do want to remind everyone that we have, from my understanding, had a consensus around not surpassing 50% of the ARPA money on this specific process. And I just want everyone to understand that. So I hear Councilmember Freeman that there may be some opportunity in the future for some of these projects where we're saying do not fund. Again, I'm reminding folks that those projects are listed as do not fund because typically they are areas that the county tends to fund and more in their wheelhouse. So are we still on the same page that we are making a decision today about column A, B, C, or D? And if there's capacity to fund more because of how the staff process moves forward, we will do so. Can I get a thumbs up if that's where everyone is?
Say that again.
Okay. Based on how we move forward with staff, what we're coming up with today is still, we're making a decision about column A, B, C, or D?
Yes.
Okay. And if there is money, essentially, because when we're saying, okay, let's say this person asked for up to $1 million, but they only got 500,000, right? If there's left over from that half, then we could look to some of these projects that are do not fund.
I would add a if then at the invite to reapply section of this list.
You mean you would stop at the spreadsheet, it's the ECH COVID Recovery Initiative, everything above that is what we would prioritize. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4.
So everything above that priority would fall
So there's
under,
12 projects.
would fall under option C. And then once you work through option C, then you would include all of the funded options, all of the staff recommendation fund, and the invite to reapply.
And the invite?
If then, and, so, yes, a whole formula in here. So if we have funds left, then we add the additional fund section that staff recommended and the invite to reapply.
Are you anticipating that we would, I want to make sure that staff are real clear on what we're saying, and I don't want to confuse anyone further. At this point, what I'm hearing from you, you would want to look at all those projects in the same vein, or you want to prioritize these 12 projects that say fund next to them first?
Prioritize the 12 projects.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to clarify, just because I want to make sure that I am stating what Councilmember Freeman has said and that the staff has got some direction from us. Councilmember Freeman's suggestion is that, yes, we're sticking to either option A, B, C, or D. If there are funds left over, and when I say if, I'm saying within that first, basically $22 million. If there are any funds left over, we would prioritize the 12 projects in the current bucket that says do not fund, encourage for a county process. That the first project in that column are the We Are for the long haul, and it ends with the ECH COVID Recovery Initiative. All of those have fund next to them. And so that would be the next bucket of projects we prioritize. Thank you. Thank you. I'm going to call on Manager Page and then Mayor Pro Tem.
The last part.
So I would just, for clarity, and I know this is new territory for all of us, so I appreciate the opportunity to speak first, but that if we have an if something, then something, that we actually do the process that you all select here and bring those results back and make it very clear that we're not just going to move to another phase without further guidance from you. So that would be my preference.
I appreciate that, Manager Page. That would be my preference as well. Can we see if there's consensus around that? I'm seeing some, thank you. So yes, I appreciate that. Mayor Pro Tem Middleton.
Thank you, Councilmember Caballero. Good afternoon, everyone. Madam Mayor, good to see you. Welcome home. I don't really, and perhaps staff can help, I don't really see how money will be left over, because what I'm reading is up to a maximum of $1 million. So if 70% is 70%. So if your 70% exceeds 1 million, you're just going to get 1 million. I don't see this as a staff. They're kind of like having a range. I mean, and staff can help me with what I'm reading 100% is 100%. If there's ranking on option B from 100% to 50% based upon rank, that seems to me that's a pretty precise calculation and pretty precise algorithm. And then where it says fund all projects recommended to fund or invited to apply at 100% of requests up to a maximum of 1 million, meaning that 70% is 70, but if your request exceeded 1 million, it would just be capped at 1 million. There's no tiering. Is that, am I reading that right?
Manager Page.
Yes. So I would just like to bring a little bit of clarity into this part. So what we're looking at is we are looking at proposals with dollar figures and general scopes of service. When we would get into the contract negotiation or discussions with the proposers, layering that against Treasury rules, that could be a whole portion of someone's requested scope that may not meet Treasury requirements. So there's going to be funding for what the proposal intends to do, but it could be that that organization either no longer has capacity to do that, or that portion of what they were going to do may not meet Treasury requirements. But we would be very, very diligent with our negotiations with the proposer.
So the numbers that we're looking at in A, B, and C, D, it may be our intention to give that organization that amount of money, but they may not be able to get that amount. Okay, all right.
I would say at this point in time, though, that I would not rely on there being a lot of excess capacity in those proposals to fund, a lot. I don't want to predict it because we haven't gotten to that process yet, but I wouldn't count on it being, hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Thank you. And that was kind of my point. I didn't really, I don't know that it would cross the threshold where we can kind of make contingency plans here today. But I'm fully on board with choosing an option today. Option A, if we do anything other than option A, it seems to me that in a de facto sense, we are effectively making the score 20 that is threshold crossing. And I want to honor the staff's work, and I think all of the options do honor the staff's work, but I think that we just need to keep in mind that effectively we would be moving the floor, the threshold you cross to get money effectively from 24, whatever it is, down to, I guess the lowest score is 20. And with that in mind, as we think about future things we may want to fund, if that is precedent setting or what type of message that sends. I'd like many of us I tend towards wanting to give more than less and get as many projects as we want. But my assumption is that there was some type of logic or rubric that the staff employed to cut it off at 24. And I know that that original swing they took was based upon direction from the council. So whatever we decide today, I do want the record to reflect that essentially we're moving that score, and whatever message that may send to the public in terms of what projects cross that threshold, I think we need to keep in mind when it comes to future deliberations. So, thank you, Councilmember.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Middleton. Out of curiosity, is there an option that you would prefer, or are you saying you prefer option A?
Well, I'm kind of leaning towards C myself, but I do want to hear if there was going to be any other discussion from my colleagues about the implications of what are we effectively saying if the staff saw merit in the score 24 and we're in effect changing that to 20, as a council, will that have any implications on how we deliberate in the future and how we look at projects, other projects, even the ones that we're talking about looking that aren't on this initial list? Is 20, I guess, the new threshold is what I'm asking. But to answer your question directly, Councilmember, I'm leaning towards C.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Does anyone else have any questions or comments? Mayor O'Neill.
Yeah, thank you. First of all, I have to say thank you to our two leaders in this effort. They have done a great and excellent job, and we really appreciate all of the time, and this has taken some time for them to do, and I just want to acknowledge that this has been in addition to all of your other duties and a life, and you found time to do this so well, and also to Councilwoman Johnson, who put this spreadsheet together to make it so much easier for us to kind of grasp it, especially those of us who are in this still kind of new vein. Thank you for that. So I've wrestled back and forth, and I always like to listen to my seniors on the council before I try to come to a decision. So I've gone back and forth, but I do think that in looking at option C, and I'm torn between option C and option B, so I could go either way. C being first, but not a strong first, or B. So I'm there.
Thank you, Mayor O'Neill. Councilmember Williams, do you have a preference?
Yep, I just want to complicate it a little more. Now that I am thinking about it and looking at it, we are going to select an option, and I feel bad because I was on the committee with you to work on this, so sorry. We are about to give staff directives on hard numbers, but the process after this are not hard numbers. It's several conditions that has to be considered. So I would, I'm leaning toward option C. However, I would like to lean toward option C with conditions that staff have the flexibility to assess whatever factors that are in play when they're speaking with the applicant. And it doesn't put them in a position of saying, well, I have to give you 70%, but that key phrase of up to 70%.
So
go ahead.
So what I would say is anytime we have not developed a full scope of service in a contract, there's going to be negotiations around the allocation to the project and the scope of service that can be provided. So it is not a donation. No. It will be a negotiated scope of service with the proposer who's going to do the great work in the community. So that's not a complication. The reason I brought up we would come forward to every one of these contracts would have to come to council. But before we would come forward with contract after contract after contract, we would come back with a report of our negotiations on an interim basis with these proposers.
Thank you, Madam Manager.
Thank you. Councilmember Hyman, I was just curious. I know this is very new for you, and I don't want to put you on the spot, but I also don't want to not give you the opportunity to share any comments or questions you may have.
Well, Thank you so much. I just want to say thank you also for the organization of this, because this is new for me, but the layout of this gives me some sense of being able to understand it. And so again, I too, after listening to my colleagues, I am honestly torn between option B and C. Leaning more towards option C. But yeah, more towards option C, because I think that the work that has already been done in terms of reviewing the proposals, I think this would basically add to giving a good option, option C.
Thank you. I'm going to see if anyone else has anything to add, and then if not, I would like to share where I'm kind of sitting. Okay, thank you. So I'm leaning towards option B, partly because of what Mayor Pro Tem Middleton did say, which is that we did lower the score to accommodate more projects. But that funding formula does basically reward, I understand it's an up to, but they would have an opportunity to be closer to their full funding ask if we went with option B, which is why I am leaning that way. I'm fine with option C as well. Obviously, option D, because it surpasses that commitment of going over half of our ARPA money, I'm not in favor of that one. And then option A, because I'll own it, I'm one of the council members who was very hard pressed to stick to that hard 24, partly because there were some community projects that were very close to that cutoff score in communities that had received very, very little help to date. So I will say that that's one of the reasons I was one of the council members back in December who asked for the pause and wanted it, purely because I knew that there were some projects in there that I wanted to see if there was a way we could move forward. So that's why I'm leaning towards option B. I'm going to open that up again. I don't know where we are. Let's see. I think we're kind of divided right now between option B or option C. So I'm curious to see if anyone is willing to move one way or the other.
Considering
Right now I've got, let's see, Councilmember Freeman is option C, Councilmember Williams is option C, Mayor Pro Tem is option C, and I think Councilmember Hyman, you were either option B or C, but okay, so then we have landed on C.
So we need to call for a motion on this?
I don't think so, because this isn't, it's informal. So that the public are aware, the council has come to consensus on funding all projects that staff recommended to fund or invite to reapply at 70% of their request, up to a max of $1 million. Obviously, the next step will be staff-led. These folks will be entering into contracts with the city of Durham and will have to adhere to the Treasury Department's rules. And so we really do want to emphasize the up to, because there's components that they will be working through with the project proposers. For all the folks who did apply, we have an immense amount of talent in this city. It was evident in these projects that were submitted by our community members. We know everyone worked really, really hard. We also understand that folks may be disappointed today. I think all of us can say we are also disappointed because we recognize there's deep need in our city, and that need wasn't 100% met. I want to thank everyone and thank my colleagues, and I think our business, as far as I can tell, is completed.
Any final remarks, Councilman Williams, from you, and then we'll wrap it up.
No, thank you to my colleague, Councilmember Caballero. Thanks, colleagues, for your patience. Thanks to the community for the patience on this. We will churn this out to be the best results. And after we get this process pretty much done, we'll begin the process of what the next phase looks like in regards of community investment and engagement.
Once again, I'd just like to say thank you to my two able colleagues and Councilwoman Johnson, who led us through this process, and to our staff. This process had already started by the time Councilman Williams and I were elected, and we were in full mode. The county, I think, has started their process, and I do want to reiterate that I have been in talks with Chairwoman Howerton about there being a joint effort with the remaining funds that we have and whatever they decide to do and if they have any remaining funds. So all hope is not lost. That is very much why we have decided as a group to say that we are going to hold on to half of those funds in order to allow the county to catch up and figure out their process so that we will be able to come together. So for those who are not funded today, just hold on a little while longer and let us get through that process. To those who are still about to enter into the phase with our able city staff, we thank you for your patience. We thank you for your love for the Bull City. And as usual, Bull City strong. Unless there is anything else, we are hereby adjourned at 3:19. Thank you all for today.